Hi everyone. I'm making this video in response to the interview with Bernard Pullman concerning property and how it would function and what would change in the equal money system. I'm doing this to explain my perspective and my understanding based on the video interview called Property and the Equal Money System, an interview with Bernard Pullman which explains the principles of the equal money system and how they look when applied to real life. From a wider perspective, I'm doing this because this is what makes sense to me, and this is what I stand for in this world. A monetary system that does what's best for all in all ways. The way we view property today as a possession or a thing that only those who can afford have the right to own and have the right to profit off of has got to change. Property as a space on the earth belongs to no one, should be enjoyed by everyone equally, and is the responsibility of everyone equally to maintain to the highest standards for future generations to enjoy as well. In our current economic system, property has been abused, and property has been used to abuse and oppress, but never has property been looked at by our current system as a whole as something shared, something that each person has the right to access, something that can be used as a sustenance for all to nourish and be nourished by. Some examples of the abuse of property are the fact that women in many cultures have been denied the right to own property, creating a dependence upon men, creating an unequal distribution of power among genders. In some cases, if women don't have a man in their lives, in the form of a brother, uncle, father, son, or husband, then they simply have no means of supporting themselves and have no value as a human being. In North America, specifically Canada, women fought for 15 years for their right to own property, and without it, many of the uneducated and unskilled female settlers who were sent over at the country's founding to populate the colony, they were forced to compromise themselves for an income, many in the form of prostituting their bodies for money. Also, in the same country, property was given to those men who married and settled so that they could reproduce and increase the population of the settlers who effectively wiped out most of the native peoples of the land. This was the motivation of France in this particular scenario, but is true to all countries who were colonized, to dominate, to take over, to gain power, more land, etc. But property was utilized as an incentive to do this, which is yet another example of the way in which humanity, those in power, have abused the existence of property, have used it to abuse others, all for selfish means. In this particular case, this property was denied to those who did not marry, who had no children, and it was given to those who were furthering the objectives of those in power. So if you think about how those in power have abused property since the very beginning, you realize that we were brought up to view property in this way, as an instrument of manipulation or domination, something that can be given to achieve an end or taken away without any consideration for the lives that this action destroys. Something that, if you're lucky enough to have, you live in fear of having it taken away by those in power, by the banks, by those less fortunate. Those who own property fence it off and guard it, but from whom? We are really just mimicking the behavior of abusive leaders, using our property in our own self-interest while denying others access. Access to the most basic elements in life: land, shelter, food production, raw materials, whatever the property may be used for. It's time to change how we view property. It is simply not to be owned, but to be used, cherished really, and cared for as this unconditional source of giving that it is. It is here to provide for us and to sustain every child and human being that is born so that they can be healthy and grow strong and be nurtured because of the intrinsic value of life that exists within the child, the human, and within the property that is provided to us in all its shapes and forms. This is the value of life, all life. It is in this way that property has real value. As Bernard mentioned, it has the ability to produce that which we use to create everything with. It is our shelter from the elements. It's what keeps us alive, and you can't take that value away. A piece of property can lose its monetary value, but it has a real value that cannot be taken away. And this is life, really. These are some of the basics in life that we deprive people of when we say, this piece of land is mine and you may not have access to it. From a mass scale down to an individual level, it's the exact same thing. In giving people this type of ownership with absolutely no responsibility in a profit-based system, we're seeing lands destroyed by deforestation, overuse, overabundant chemical use, fertilizers, pesticides. If you look at why land is farmed to death, where fertile soils become useless sand and dust, it's because of the quest for more profit by bigger yields and maxing out the land's capacity to produce. In this way, individuals and corporations are abusing their property for profit. Also, a minority of people, beings in the world, have huge houses, way more property than is needed for a comfortable life, while billions live in disease-infested slums without any chance of ever being given even the slightest means to better themselves or the lives of their children. Is it impossible to see property in a new light? Is it so radical to view property as a basic component of our survival to which every human being has a right? In an equal money system, property would be given its proper value, which is invaluable, by taking profit out of the equation and using property according to, as Bernard mentioned, users' rights, according to what's best for the property and what's best for those using it. It's so simple. I support this, whatever you want to call this, a philosophy of equality, a new economic system proposal, a different way of life, questioning the status quo, whatever. Like I said in the beginning, this is what makes sense to me, and this is what I stand for in this world when it comes to the subject of property. A monetary system that does what's best for all in all ways. This video was simply my perspective and my understanding based on the video Property and the Equal Money System, an interview with Bernard Pullman in explaining the principles of the equal money system and how they look when applied to real life. Thank you.